The storm hit without warning. Rain pounded against the metal roof of the small farmhouse like bullets, and the wind howled through the gaps in the walls. David pulled his jacket tighter and checked the windows one more time. Living alone on the edge of human territory meant storms like this could be dangerous. He had been a farmer here for 8 years now, ever since his wife passed away from the fever that swept through their colony. The land was good, and he made enough to get by. Most days he didn't mind the quiet. But on nights like this, the silence between thunder crashes reminded him just how alone he really was. Lightning flashed, turning everything white for a split second. In that moment, David thought he saw something near his front door. He waited for the next flash. There it was again, a dark shape huddled against the side of his house. David grabbed his flashlight and opened the door carefully. The wind nearly knocked him back, but he pushed forward. His light fell on 2 figures pressed against the wall. One was clearly an adult, holding something small and still in their arms. "Hey!" David called out over the storm. "Are you okay?" The adult figure looked up. Even in the rain and darkness, David could see this wasn't human. The face was longer, with scales instead of skin, and large eyes that reflected his flashlight like a cat's. But there was something in those eyes he recognized immediately. Pure terror and desperation. "Please," the creature said in broken human speech. The voice was clearly female, though different from any human woman. "My daughter. She is dying. Please help." David didn't hesitate. Whatever this being was, she had a sick child in her arms. He stepped into the storm and helped them, both inside. The mother, because that's clearly what she was, stumbled as they crossed the threshold. She was exhausted and soaked to the bone. Once inside, David could see them better. The mother was tall and thin, with green and brown scales covering her skin. She wore torn clothes that might have once been nice. In her arms was a small version of herself, a child who couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 years old. The little one wasn't moving. "Put her on the couch," David said, clearing space quickly. "What happened to her?" The mother laid her daughter down gently. The child's breathing was shallow and her scales had lost their color. "No food. For many days. We travel very far. Please, I do anything. I cook for you, I clean, She paused, looking ashamed. "I stay in your bed if you want. Just please. Save my baby." David felt his face get hot. "You don't need to. Look, let me help your daughter first. We can talk about everything else later." He had some medical supplies, basic stuff that most frontier farmers kept around. He checked the child's pulse and temperature. She was burning up with fever and clearly hadn't eaten in days. David had seen this before during the hard times in their colony. "What's her name?" he asked, preparing some medicine. "Kira," the mother whispered. "My name is Zara. We are from Veltar." David had heard of the Veltar people. Their world had been destroyed in some kind of war. Refugees had been scattered across the galaxy, but most human colonies wouldn't take them in. Too much fear, too many questions. "Kira's going to be okay," David said, though he wasn't completely sure. "But she needs rest, food, and medicine. How long have you two been traveling?" Zara's shoulders shook. 2 months. Maybe more. I lose count. We had ship passage to human world, but they make us leave. Say we are dangerous. We walk many days to find someone who help." David mixed some medicine with water and carefully gave it to Kira. The child stirred slightly, which was a good sign. "Why didn't you go to the main colony? They have better doctors there." "They turn us away," Zara said quietly. "Say we need papers. Say we might be spies. Say many things, but always same answer. Go away." As David worked to help the sick child, he watched Zara out of the corner of his eye. Despite her exhaustion, She tried to clean up the water they had tracked in. She straightened his books and moved things around, trying to be useful. "You don't have to do that," he said. "You should rest too." "I must," Zara replied firmly. "You help us. I must earn this help." "You don't have to earn basic human decency," David said. "Anyone would help a sick child." Zara looked at him strangely. "Not anyone. We ask many humans. You are first to open door." That hit David harder than he expected. He had always thought of humans as generally good people, but maybe he had been lucky to live away from the main colonies where fear ruled more than compassion. Kira's fever started to break around midnight. Her breathing became easier, and some color returned to her scales. Zara hadn't moved from her daughter's side, holding her small hand and whispering in their own language. "She's going to be okay," David said, "but she needs to eat small amounts every few hours. And both of you need to rest." "I make food," Zara said, starting to get up. "No," David said firmly. "You need sleep. I'll watch her tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out the rest." "But I must," Zara began. "You must take care of yourself so you can take care of her," David interrupted. "That's what mothers do, right? Same on every world, I bet." For the first time since they arrived, Zara almost smiled. "Yes, same on every world." David set up his guest room for them and made sure they had everything they needed. As he prepared to spend the night in his chair watching over Kira, he thought about what Zara had said. She was willing to do anything, even things that made her uncomfortable, just to save her daughter. He had never been a father, but he understood that kind of love. It was the same love that had driven his wife to work herself sick, helping other colonists during the fever outbreak. The same love that made people do impossible things when someone they cared about was in danger. Outside, the storm was finally passing. But David had the feeling that the real challenges were just beginning. He had taken in 2 alien refugees, something that would definitely cause problems with his neighbors and maybe even the colonial government. But looking at little Kira sleeping peacefully for the first time in who knows how long and seeing the relief on her mother's face, David knew he had made the right choice. Sometimes doing the right thing wasn't complicated at all. It just meant seeing people, no matter what they looked like, as people who deserved help when they needed it most. 3 days had passed since the storm. Kira was getting stronger each day, but she still needed lots of rest and small meals every few hours. David had never taken care of a sick child before, but he was learning fast. The little girl was curious about everything, his books, his farming tools, even the way human food tasted. Zara, on the other hand, wouldn't sit still. Every morning, David woke up to find her already working. She had figured out how to use his cooking equipment and was making breakfast with whatever she could find in his kitchen. The food was different. She used spices and cooking methods from her world, but it was actually really good. "You don't have to do this," David told her for the 10th time that week. "You should be resting too." "I must work," Zara replied, stirring something that smelled amazing. "You give us food, shelter, medicine. I must give something back." David sat down at his kitchen table watching her work. She moved quickly and efficiently, like someone who had cooked for a family for years. "What did you do back on your home world before the war?" Zara's hands paused for just a moment. "I was teacher. I teach young ones about stars, about planets, about how life grows in different places." Her voice got quieter. "I had good life, nice house, many students who liked learning. Then war came and everything changed." "I'm sorry," David said. He meant it. "What happened to your husband? Kira's father?" Zara turned away from the stove. "He was soldier, fought to protect our world. He did not come home." She wiped her eyes quickly with the back of her hand. "Just me and Kira left. When our World became too dangerous. We had to leave everything behind. David felt a familiar pain in his chest. He knew what it was like to lose someone you loved. My wife died 3 years ago. Sickness took her. Some days I still set 2 plates for dinner without thinking about it. For a moment, they shared the quiet sadness of people who understood loss. Then Kira's voice broke the silence from the living room. "Mama, what is this?" she called out in her small voice. They both rushed to check on her. Kira was sitting up on the couch holding one of David's photo albums. She pointed to a picture of David and his wife at their wedding. "That's my wife, Anna," David said gently. "She's not here anymore, but I keep her pictures to remember her." Kira studied the photo carefully. "She looks kind, like Mama." Then she looked up at David with those big, bright eyes. "You miss her?" "Every day," David admitted. "I miss Papa too," Kira said quietly. "But Mama says he watches us from the stars." Now, David felt his throat get tight. This little girl had been through so much, but she still had hope and kindness in her heart. "Your mama is right. The people we love never really leave us." Over the next few days, David started to enjoy having company. His house felt alive again with Kira's laughter and questions, and Zara's cooking made every meal feel special. But he could see that Zara was still uncomfortable, like she was waiting for him to ask for something in return. On the 6th day, everything changed. David was working in his garden when he saw dust clouds in the distance. Vehicles were coming, and they were coming fast. His heart sank. He knew what this meant. "Zara!" he called, running toward the house. "Take Kira and go to the back room. Don't come out until I say it's safe." 3 hover trucks pulled up to his house, and 8 people got out. David recognized most of them. They were from the main colony, settlement about 20 miles away. The man leading them was Robert Chen, the colony's security chief. "David," Robert said, walking up with his hand resting on his weapon. "We heard you might have some visitors." "Just me here, Robert," David replied calmly. "What brings you all the way out here?" "Don't play games," Robert said. "Tommy Peterson saw alien tracks around your property when he flew over yesterday. We need to check your house." David stepped between Robert and his front door. "You need a warrant to search my home." "This is a frontier colony, David. We don't have time for paperwork when it comes to security threats." "Security threats?" David couldn't keep the anger out of his voice. "What threat? A sick child and her mother who are running from a war?" "So you admit they're here," said Janet Walsh, another colonist David had known for years. "David, these aliens could be spies or carriers of diseases or worse. You're putting all of us at risk." "The only risk here is us losing our humanity," David shot back. "They needed help. I helped them. That's what decent people do." "Decent people protect their own kind first," Robert said. "Stand aside, David. We're taking them in for processing." "Processing? You mean throwing them in a detention center and then shipping them off to die somewhere else?" The group of colonists looked uncomfortable, but Robert remained firm. "It's not our problem what happens to them after. Our job is to protect human lives." David looked at each of their faces. These were people he had known for years, people he had helped during hard times, people he had considered friends. But fear had changed them into something he didn't recognize. "You want them?" David said quietly. "You'll have to go through me first." "David, be reasonable," Janet pleaded. "There are 8 of us and 1 of you. Don't make this harder than it has to be." "I'm making it exactly as hard as it needs to be," David replied. "This is my land, my house, and my choice. They're under my protection." Robert sighed and reached for his weapon. "I'm sorry it has to be this way, old friend." Just then, the front door opened. Zara stepped out with Kira hiding behind her legs. "Please," she said to the group, "do not hurt this good man. We will come with you." "No," David said firmly. "You're staying right here." "David," Zara whispered, "there are too many. I will not let you be hurt because of us." "And I won't let you be hurt because of fear and ignorance," David replied. The standoff continued for several long minutes. Finally, Robert lowered his weapon slightly. "You have 24 hours, David. Get them off this planet, or we'll be back with more people and official authorization. Don't make us choose between our friendship and our duty." After the colonists left, David found himself shaking with anger and adrenaline. Zara immediately started packing the few things they had. "We must go," she said sadly. "I am sorry we brought trouble to your home." "You're not going anywhere," David said. "This is your home now, and I'm going to figure out how to make it legal." "But how?" Zara asked. "They will come back." David smiled grimly. "Then we better be ready for them. I know a few things about frontier law that Robert seems to have forgotten, and I know some people who might be willing to help." As night fell, David sat at his communication terminal, reaching out to contacts he hadn't spoken to in years. If his new family was going to stay safe, he needed to fight smart, not just hard. The battle for their right to exist in peace was just beginning. 2 weeks had passed since Robert and his group made their threat. David had been busy making calls and sending messages to every contact he could think of. His old friend from law school, now working in colonial administration, had given him some useful advice about refugee protection laws. It wasn't much, but it might buy them some time. Meanwhile, life in the house had settled into a routine that felt surprisingly normal. Kira was completely healthy now, running around the property and asking endless questions about everything she saw. She had learned enough human language to have real conversations, and her curiosity was infectious. "David, why do human plants grow in straight lines?" she asked one morning, following him through his vegetable garden. "Makes them easier to take care of," David explained, showing her how to check if the corn was ready. "On your world, did plants grow differently?" "Yes, they grew in circles like spirals. Mama says it was because our sun moved differently across the sky." Kira touched one of the corn stalks gently. "I like both ways. Different is not bad, just different." David smiled. This little girl understood something that many adults seemed to have forgotten. Zara had become an amazing cook, mixing flavors from her world with human ingredients. Word had somehow gotten out about her cooking, and a few of the braver colonists had started stopping by. They would come up with excuses, needing to borrow tools or asking about crop rotation. But David could tell they were really curious about the food smells coming from his kitchen. "Try this," Zara would say, offering small samples to visitors. Most of them were surprised by how good it tasted. His old family recipe, but I changed for human taste buds. Tom Bradley, who owned the farm next to David's, had become a regular visitor. At first, he claimed he just wanted to check on David's situation, but now he came by every few days just to talk and eat Zara's cooking. "I'll be honest," Tom said, one afternoon finishing a bowl of Zara's soup. "When I first heard about you folks being here, I was worried. But you're just people. Good people trying to make a life." "Fear makes people think strange things," Zara replied gently. "On my world, we also feared things we did not understand. But fear and understanding cannot live in same heart." David watched these interactions with growing hope. Maybe not everyone was as closed-minded as Robert's group. Maybe there was a chance for Zara and Kira to build a real life here. But that hope was tested when David's farm equipment started breaking down. First, his irrigation system stopped working. Then his harvester developed mysterious problems. Finally, his communication array was damaged during what looked like a storm, but David noticed footprints around the equipment that didn't match the weather patterns. "Someone's trying to make life difficult for us," David told Tom during one of his visits. "I was afraid of this," Tom replied, looking around nervously. "Robert's been talking to people, telling them you're a threat to colony security. Some folks are getting worked up." That evening, David found Zara sitting on his front porch, staring at the sunset. She did this most nights now, and he had started joining her. It was peaceful, watching the sky change colors over the fields they had worked together. "You are losing friends because of us," Zara said quietly. "Maybe we should leave." "Where would you go?" David asked. "And don't say you'd figure it out. I want a real answer." Zara was quiet for a long moment. "There is refugee camp on Kepler Station. Very crowded, not much food, but they take anyone. We could survive there." "Survive isn't the same as living," David said. "Kira is thriving here. She's learning, growing, becoming herself. You're teaching me things about cooking and farming I never knew. This is working." "But your neighbors—" "Some of my neighbors," David corrected. "Others are starting to see what I see. Tom brings his wife by sometimes now. The Henderson family asked if Kira wanted to play with their kids. Change is happening, just slowly. And if it does not happen fast enough," David looked at her seriously, "then we'll deal with whatever comes, together." The next morning brought unexpected visitors. A government transport landed in David's field, and 3 people in official uniforms walked toward the house. David's heart started racing, but then he noticed these weren't security officers. "David Chen?" asked the woman leading the group. "I'm Inspector Lisa Wong from Colonial Refugee Services. We received your application for protected status for 2 Veltar refugees." David blinked in surprise. His lawyer friend had filed the paperwork, but he hadn't expected anyone to actually come out to investigate. "Yes, that's right. They're inside if you'd like to meet them." The inspection took most of the day. The officials interviewed David, Zara, and even Kira. They checked the living conditions, reviewed medical records, and asked detailed questions about the refugees' background and David's ability to provide for them. "This is quite unusual," Inspector Wong told David privately. "Most refugee applications come from large organizations or government sponsors. Individual sponsors are rare." "Does that matter legally?" David asked. "Not at all. In fact, it might work in your favor. You're clearly providing excellent care, and the refugees are integrating well into the community." She paused. "Though I should mention, we've received some complaints about this situation." "From Robert Chen and his people?" "I can't discuss specific complaints," she said diplomatically, "but I will say that fear-based objections don't carry much weight in our review process. What matters is whether the refugees pose any genuine security risk and whether they're being properly cared for." That evening, after the officials left, David found Zara teaching Kira how to read human writing. They were using one of his old farming manuals, and Kira was sounding out words about soil composition and crop rotation. "Irrigation," Kira read slowly. "Irrigation. What does this mean, Mama?" "Is how we bring water to plants when rain is not enough," Zara explained, "like David does with his fields." "Can I help with irrigation tomorrow?" Kira asked David eagerly. "Of course," David said. "But first, you need to finish learning those words." As he watched them study together, David realized something had changed in his heart. Somewhere along the way, these 2 people had stopped being refugees he was helping and had become family he was protecting. The house felt complete, in a way it hadn't since Anna died. Later that night, as David was locking up for the evening, he heard vehicles approaching again. But this time, only 1 truck pulled up, and Tom got out along with 3 other neighbors David knew well. "Evening, David," Tom called out. "We wanted to talk to you about something." David tensed, ready for another confrontation. But Tom held up his hands peacefully. "Relax, friend. We're here because we've been thinking about what Robert said and what we've seen with our own eyes. That little girl of theirs helped my wife with her garden yesterday, and she knew things about soil that I never learned in 30 years of farming." "What are you saying?" David asked carefully. "We're saying, maybe it's time this colony learned." "Something new?" said Betty Martinez, another neighbor. And maybe it's time we stood up to bullies who think fear is more important than doing what's right. David felt a wave of relief and gratitude wash over him. Are you sure? This could cause problems for all of you. Problems we can handle, Tom said firmly. The question is, are you ready for what comes next? Because Robert isn't going to back down easily. David looked back at his house, where warm light glowed in the windows, and he could hear Zara reading, to Kira in her musical voice. His family was in there, and these good people were offering to help protect them. I've been ready, David said. Let's make this colony a place where everyone can call home. The trouble started on a Tuesday morning. David was fixing his fence when he saw the dust clouds again, but this time there were more vehicles than before. 8 trucks were heading toward his farm, and they weren't slowing down. Zara! David shouted toward the house. Get Kira and go to the safe room we talked about. He had prepared for this day, setting up a hidden space in his basement where Zara and Kira could hide if things got dangerous. He just hoped it wouldn't come to that. Robert jumped out of the lead truck with 12 other men. Some David recognized and others he didn't. They were all carrying weapons and had the look of people who had already made up their minds about what they were going to do. Time's up, David, Robert called out. The Colonial Council voted last night. Those aliens have to go, and if you won't hand them over, we'll take them. The Colonial Council doesn't have authority over refugee cases, David replied, standing his ground. That's federal law. Federal law is a long way from here, said a man David didn't recognize. He was bigger than the others and had scars on his face. Out here, we make our own rules. Who are you? David asked. Name's Pike. I specialize in solving problems that local authorities can't handle. Pike smiled, but it wasn't friendly. I've dealt with alien problems before. David felt cold fear in his stomach. These weren't just scared colonists anymore. Robert had brought in someone dangerous, someone who enjoyed hurting people. Robert, think about what you're doing, David said, trying to reach his old friend. These are good people. Kira is just a child. Alien children grow up to be alien adults, Pike said before Robert could answer. Best to solve problems before they get bigger. That's when David heard the sound of more vehicles approaching. He turned to see Tom's truck leading a convoy of 6 other vehicles. Tom jumped out with Betty, the Henderson family, and several other neighbors David had hoped would help. Afternoon, Robert, Tom said calmly, but David could see the tension in his shoulders. Seems like you brought quite a crowd today. This doesn't concern you, Tom, Robert replied. Go home before someone gets hurt. Funny thing about that, Betty said, stepping forward. Turns out it does concern us. We live here too, and we don't like bullies telling us who we can and can't be neighbors with. Pike laughed. Looks like we got ourselves a standoff. How exciting. He pulled out his weapon and checked it casually. I do love it when people make things interesting. David's heart was pounding, but he tried to stay calm. Nobody needs to get hurt here. Just walk away, and we can all go back to our lives. Can't do that, Pike said. I was paid to solve a problem, and I always finish what I start. That's when something unexpected happened. Kira came running out of the house. Despite all of David's warnings to stay hidden, the little girl ran straight to David and hugged his leg. I don't want to hide anymore, she said in her clear, brave voice. This is my home too. Kid, get back in the house, Pike said, but his voice sounded different now, less sure of himself. Why are you angry at us? Kira asked, looking up at him with those big, curious eyes. We didn't hurt anyone. We just wanted somewhere safe to live. You're not supposed to be here, Robert said, but his voice was gentler than before. This world is for humans. Why? Kira asked simply. There's enough room for everyone. David taught me that sharing makes everything better. Pike raised his weapon toward the child. Enough talking. Time to end this. That's when Zara appeared. But she wasn't the quiet, grateful refugee who had been cooking and cleaning for weeks. She moved like lightning, faster than any human could move. Before Pike could react, she had disarmed him and put him on the ground. "You will not hurt my daughter," Zara said, and her voice was different, too. "Stronger, more dangerous." "Mama," Kira said, surprised. "You said you were a teacher." "I was a teacher," Zara replied, keeping Pike pinned down with moves that looked military. "But before that, I was something else. Before the war, I helped train our world's defenders." David stared at her in amazement. This gentle woman who made, soup and read bedtime stories had just taken down an armed man like it was nothing. "You lied to us," Robert said, backing away. "You said she was just a refugee." "She is a refugee," David replied firmly. "She's also a mother protecting her child." "Wouldn't you do the same thing?" Pike struggled under Zara's hold. "Get off me, you alien freak." "I suggest you speak more respectfully," Zara said calmly. "I am being very gentle with you right now." Tom stepped forward and picked up Pike's weapon. "I think it's time for you and your friends to leave, Robert. And take this hired thug with you." "This isn't over," Robert said, but he sounded defeated. "The council won't stand for this." "Then maybe it's time for a new council," Betty said. "One that represents all the people who live here, not just the ones who are afraid of everything different." As Robert's group loaded Pike into their trucks and drove away, David turned to Zara. She was holding Kira close, and both of them were shaking a little from the adrenaline. "Why didn't you tell me you had military training?" David asked. "Because I did not want you to fear me too," Zara said quietly. "I wanted to be just a mother and a cook, and someone who could make a peaceful life. But when they threatened Kira..." Her voice got harder. "I will not let anyone hurt my daughter." "I would never fear you for protecting your family," David said. "I'm proud of you for being strong when it mattered." Kira looked up at her mother with new admiration. "Mama, you were amazing. Can you teach me to do that?" "I hope you never need to learn," Zara said, smoothing her daughter's hair. "But if the time comes, yes, I will teach you to protect yourself and others." That evening, as they all sat around David's kitchen table sharing dinner, Tom brought up something important. "You know this isn't over, right?" he said. "Robert's going to try again, and next time he might bring more people." "Then we'll be ready," David said. "All of us together." "I have been thinking," Zara said slowly. "Perhaps it is time I stop hiding who I am. If I am to live here, really live here, people should know all of me, not just the quiet part." David reached over and took her hand. "You're right. No more hiding. We're family now, all of us, and families face things together." Kira smiled brightly. "Does this mean I can help with the farm work tomorrow? Not just the easy stuff?" "You can help with whatever you want," David said. "This is your home, and you're part of everything we do here." As night fell and their friends headed back to their own homes, David realized something important had changed. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were building something new, something better. A community where strength came from standing together, not from pushing others away. The fight wasn't over, but they had won something important today. They had shown that when good people stand up to bullies, courage is contagious. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change the world. 3 months had passed since the confrontation with Pike and his group. The colony had changed in ways no one could have expected. What started as fear and division had slowly turned into something much better. The biggest change came 2 weeks after the fight, when Inspector Wong returned with official news. She landed her transport right in the middle of the weekly farmers market that had grown up around David's property. "David Chen," she announced with a smile. "I'm pleased to inform you that Zara and Kira have been granted full refugee protection status. They are now legal residents of this colony with all the rights that come with that status." The crowd that had gathered to hear the news broke into cheers. Tom threw his hat in the air, and Betty started crying happy tears. But the biggest smiles belonged to Kira, who had been learning to read legal documents and understood exactly what this meant. "Does this mean we never have to leave?" she asked David, tugging on his shirt. "Never," David said, picking her up and spinning her around. "This is your home forever now." But the legal victory was just the beginning. Robert and his supporters hadn't given up easily. They had tried to challenge the decision, filed complaints, and even attempted to call for new colony elections. Each time, they found themselves facing more and more people who disagreed with them. The turning point came when Zara offered to teach a class about farming techniques from her home world. What started as a small gathering of curious neighbors turned into something amazing. Zara's knowledge of soil science, plant biology, and sustainable farming was incredible. "On Veltar, we learned to work with the land, not against it," she explained to a group of 20 farmers who had come to learn. "Each plant tells you what it needs if you know how to listen." She showed them how to read soil conditions by smell and touch, how to use certain plants to naturally improve the ground for other crops, and how to create fertilizer from things they had been throwing away. Within a month, the farms using her techniques were producing 30% more food with half the work. "I'll be honest," said Jim Parker, one of the farmers who had initially supported Robert. "I thought these aliens would be nothing but trouble. But my family is eating better than we have in years, and I'm working half as hard. Maybe I was wrong about some things." Kira had become something of a local celebrity. Her ability to communicate with the native animals on the planet had turned out to be incredibly useful. The small creatures that had been eating crops and damaging equipment seemed to listen to her. "They're not trying to cause problems," Kira explained to a group of fascinated adults. "They're just hungry and scared. If we give them food in one place, they'll stay away from the farms." She was right. By setting up feeding areas away from the crops, the animal damage dropped to almost nothing. The colony's agricultural output increased dramatically, and everyone had more food and more free time. David watched all of this with pride and amazement. The quiet little girl who had arrived dying in her mother's arms was now teaching adults things they had never thought possible. And Zara, who had been willing to become a servant just to save her daughter's life, was now respected as one of the most knowledgeable people in the colony. But the biggest change was in David himself. His house, which had been quiet and lonely for 3 years, was now full of laughter and life. Zara's cooking had become legendary throughout the colony, and people would travel from the main settlement just to taste her fusion of human and Veltar cuisine. "You know," Tom said one evening as they all sat on David's porch watching the sunset, "I never thought I'd say this, but this place feels more like home now than it ever did before." "What do you mean?" David asked. "Before, we were all just trying to survive out here. Everyone kept to themselves, worried about their own problems. But now it feels like a real community. People help each other, share knowledge, look out for one another's kids. That's because of what you 3 started." Zara smiled softly. "Community is not about who looks the same or comes from the same place. It's about who chooses to care for each other." The official ceremony happened on a beautiful spring day. Inspector Wong had returned one final time, this time with documents that would make everything permanent. But before she could begin the proceedings, David had something he needed to say. "6 months ago, a desperate mother came to my door begging me to save her daughter's life," David began, speaking to the crowd of over 100 people who had gathered. "She offered to cook for me, clean for me, even share my bed just so her child could live." He looked at Zara, who was holding Kira's hand and smiling with tears in her eyes. "But what she gave me was so much more than that. She gave me a family. She gave me purpose. She gave me back the joy I thought I had lost forever." David got down on one knee in front of Zara, pulling out a simple ring he had made from metal, mined on their world. "Zara, you came here as a refugee asking for charity, but you've become the center of our community, the teacher who made us all better, and the woman I love more than anything in this universe." The crowd held its breath as David continued. "Will you marry me? Not out of gratitude or obligation, but because we choose each other? Because we want to build a life together as equals?" Zara's tears were flowing freely now. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, of course, yes." Kira squealed with delight and threw herself into both of their arms. "Does this mean David is going to be my papa?" "If you want me to be," David said, hugging her tight. "I've wanted that since the day you let us stay," Kira said. "You've been my papa in my heart for months." The celebration that followed lasted 3 days. People brought food, music, and gifts from across the colony. Even some families from the main settlement came to join the party. Robert and his hardcore supporters stayed away, but David noticed that many of his former followers were there, celebrating with everyone else. On the final day of the celebration, as the last guests were heading home, David found himself alone with his new family. They sat on their porch, watching the stars come out over the fields they had worked together. "Do you ever miss your old world?" David asked Zara. "I miss some things," she admitted. "The way the sunsets looked, the songs my mother used to sing, the smell of our flowers in spring. But I do not miss the fear, or the war, or the feeling that everything could be lost in a moment." "And here?" David asked. "Here. I have something I never had before, even in the good times on Veltar," Zara said, taking his hand. "Here, I have a partner who sees me as an equal. Here, my daughter can grow up without fear, learning from the best of both our worlds. Here, we are not just surviving, we are thriving." Kira, who had been quietly listening, looked up at the stars. "Papa, do you think there are other families out there who need help like we did?" David considered the question seriously. "Probably. Why? Maybe we could help them too." "We know how now." David and Zara exchanged a look. Their little girl was already thinking about how to make the world better for others. "You know what?" David said. "I think that's exactly what we should do. We've got plenty of room, and we've learned a lot about how to make this work." "The first interspecies refugee family on the frontier," Zara said with a laugh. "We could teach others how to build communities that work for everyone." As they sat there planning their future, David realized that what had started as a simple act of human decency had grown into something much larger. They hadn't just saved 2 lives that stormy night. They had created a new model for how different people could live together, learn from each other, and build something better than any of them could have managed alone. The scared woman who had begged at his door was gone, replaced by a confident partner and community leader. The dying child had become a bridge between species, and the lonely widower had found not just love, but purpose. Their story had become proof that the best of humanity wasn't about being strong or smart or brave. It was about choosing to see others as worthy of care, regardless of what they looked like or where they came from. It was about opening your door when someone knocks and discovering that sometimes the person asking for help is really bringing you exactly what you need.